morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. As you can see, on coastline Sydney at the moment. I'm up here at Bondi, and in a distance there you can see Bronte Beach, and I'll see if I can get another vantage point here. Just down there where the waves are breaking is Tamarama, and it's a glorious blue-skied Sydney winter's day, just spectacular. So I thought I'd come for a drive down to Bondi. I've done a couple of vlogs already. I'm not going to go for a swim today because I'm not feeling 100%, so there's no use pushing yourself when you're not 100%. But when I feel a little bit better, I will make the most of this beautiful part of Sydney. Anyway, what I want to do today is take you on a walk and talk and chat to you about a book summary entitled, a very interesting book summary, something that I think that everybody can get something out of, especially those who are parents, grandparents, and have people under their care. And the book is entitled The Drama of a Gifted Child by a female author named Alice Miller. So this book here, as you can probably understand, is all about delving back into one's childhood to try and understand and determine what may be causing some of the challenges that people are facing in their contemporary lives. So one of the quotes from this book here is where the author says, to overcome mental illness means that we need to discover and accept the truth in the individual and unique history of our childhood. So what she's trying to say there is that each person has a unique childhood and a unique set of experiences that have come into play to develop them as a person and to develop their versions of the truth and their versions of reality. And what we need to do, each and every one of us need to do as adults is at some point to look back, to examine, and as the ancient Greek philosophers said, a life unexamined is a life not lived. So the importance of self-examination is one of the key messages to come from this book here, and to look back into our childhood. Excuse me. Oh, that's not good. So what other points come out of this book here? The other really interesting point here, and I guess a lot of us can understand this as well, is that most people have a hard time connecting and understanding their own emotions once we become adults. So we become adults, and all of a sudden we have all these feelings, we have all these emotions, but we don't understand why they come about or what caused them in the first place. So what the author then is able to express so eloquently is that each and every one of us have a number of unconfronted demons, as the author calls them, that help explain why we feel so empty, even if we've accomplished so many things. Now, you can grow up, you can become an adult, you can have a beautiful home, you can have a beautiful car, have a trophy wife, have wonderful children, be working at the best place in the world, and still feel empty. So what the author is saying here is we're trying to understand and get a deeper look as to what may be causing, what may be the source of that emptiness. And what she says here is, the way we were raised has a massive impact on how we feel today. So it's nothing to be sneezed at, nothing to be brushed under the carpet. What the author says in no uncertain terms is that the way we were raised has a significant impact on how we see the world today, how we love, how we feel love, how we give love, how we see people, how we trust people. All of those things were formulated very, very early in our lives with the experiences that we had with our parents, our teachers, our siblings, uncles, aunts, and all of those experiences that we were subjected to through the media, through television. The different television shows that we've watched have all impacted us differently but significantly. So each generation has its lessons. Each generation has many things that are different from previous generations because they're different experiences. We've all had different pasts. We're all going to have different presents, and of course we're all going to have a different future as well. So what a beautiful, beautiful day. Anyway, we'll move on now. So what is this book all about? The first formal point to come out of this book here is where the author says that gifted children, and basically all children, are gifted. We are gifted with childhood, we're gifted with creativity, we're all gifted with curiosity, and we all have that as our palette and as our canvas when we're growing up. But gifted children expect a lot from themselves, which can lead to depression later in life. So it's an important one to understand that the more gifted one is, or the more privileged one is when they're growing up, that this can also be a problem in itself. Because we see time and time again that many of the greatest minds in history, amongst our family and friends, people we went to school with, people we've worked with, many of those great people, many of those greatest people have struggled with things like depression. High achievers, for example, do have a sense of grandiosity. But that in itself is a sign of a repressed childhood. Signs of repressed emotions from childhood. Because at the end of the day, if you want to be the best at anything, if you want to be the fastest person in the world, if you want to be the best batsman in the world, if you want to be the best at anything, then in some ways you need to look back and say to yourself, why? Why do I need to be the best at anything? Why can't I just be satisfied and happy with just being average at everything and being accepted by everyone without having to prove and continually prove myself? The author then reminds us here that many elite performers are so. They become elite. They become leaders in their field because from a very, very young age they had demanding parents, which makes them expect a lot from themselves, which is part of why they are so good at what they do, but it also leads them to a point where they sacrifice their feelings, which leads to some aspects of mental illness. So all those parents who have pushed and pushed and pushed their kids really hard you need to listen up here, because all of that pushing, to some kids it's great and it works, but for others it leads them to other problems that they experience later in life. And I'm not saying this, it's the author who was saying this, and as I say, all I am is an emissary of this authorship. So, and we've seen it time and time again. Many kids grow up to become scarred adults because they've had a scarred childhood. They've had parents who have been abusive. They've had parents who have been alcoholics. They've had parents who have neglected them. They've had parents who have been adulterers and have eliminated and ripped their heart apart through lack of trust. So these things are things that everybody, I guess, has to deal with. So it's important as parents for us all to understand it, appreciate it, and to respect it at least. So what else can we learn? What else can we learn from this wonderful, wonderful author? And the author goes on to say that striving for greatness eventually reaches a peak. Doesn't matter how good you are. Doesn't matter how good you are. You strive for greatness. We all strive to become fit. We all strive to become popular. We all strive to become the very best at what we do. But there does come a point, according to the author here, where you get to a peak. And once you get to a peak, then you reach a plateau. And if you're constantly pushing yourself and really, really happy with growth and development, and you reach that plateau, then that's when you start to feel depressed, because you know that once you've reached your peak, potentially it's downhill from there. So this is the important message. Let me just get over this barrier here and go on the other side. So it's this whole plateauing challenge that we face, which causes a lot of psychological trauma to people. Anyway, let me just go down here a little bit further, making sure I don't slip down the cliff and end up on the news tonight. But it is a beautiful, beautiful part of Sydney that I'm at. As you can see the ocean down there just smashing away. And if I pan all the way around, you can see the magnificent Bondi Beach down the other side there. So, as I said before, children are the product of their parenting, and some children, have grown up in families where the parents withheld their love from the children whenever they failed. And I guess we've all been guilty of this, where you have certain expectations for your children, and if your children don't meet those expectations, then as a parent you feel let down, and the way to express your feelings is probably not the most empowering and not the most serving, because by withholding your love, withholding your praise, withholding your emotions, makes kids feel invalidated, and that invalidation is a scarring event, make no mistake. So what happens is that children from this author's perspective, are scarred from this emotionally. Whilst they may not show it, they may not display it, kids are very, very good at hiding their emotion, at hiding their feelings. And as I said, they may not show it, but deep down, what's happening is that there is a scarring event and there's a damage which is taking place, and we all get to a point where we can no longer win further acceptance with our accomplishments any longer from our family and friends, because as I said, we reach a plateau. There's only so many friends who will continue to like your posts. I've seen it over the past few years. I'm a prolific vlogger, I'm a prolific poster to Facebook and Facebook groups, but there does come a time where people just get sick of you. And I say to people all the time, people who absolutely love the things that I do, the things that I say in my company, I tell them, even you will eventually get sick of what I do. Anyway, I just saw this whale breach off the coast there, so what I'll do is I'll try and keep on the camera out there to see if there's any more. There he goes. It's not breaching at the moment, but it's just blowing its what do you call it, from its blowhole. So there we have it. You know, we all have those issues that sooner or later we plateau. Sooner or later we're no longer able to gain favour in people's eyes because they move on. They find other people. They find other people funnier. They, I guess they learn from you, and then they move on. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it is something which causes trauma to everybody, especially if you're used and you thrive on acceptance from people, that once you're hooked by their acceptance and then they withdraw that acceptance from you, then you can be victim from that in terms of suffering trauma, according to what this author is telling us. The other thing that the author says here, which is really, really important and really interesting, is that childhood trauma can be passed down through the generations. And I've seen that. A lot of the Greeks that came to Australia, my parents, my grandparents, uncles, aunts, all came from an environment that was characterized by war, famine, fear, terror, and living without. Greece during World War II was subjected to trauma and terror by the Italian and German Nazi occupying forces. Greece was occupied for a number of years, which led to the economic collapse of the economy. And after that, which was even worse, was that there was a civil war because of the disturbance, because of the disruption, because of the change in power base. Then it led to a vicious and terrible civil war where Greeks fought against Greeks, brothers against brothers, nephews against uncles. It was vicious, it was ugly. And it tore families apart, it tore communities apart. And many Greeks had to leave. Greece had to leave their families, their friends, their culture to find solace, to find a new life somewhere else. Many came to Australia, others went to America, others to Canada, others to Germany. But people moved from their comfort zone, which was uncomfortable, but they moved to a place which was even more uncomfortable. It was new, it was unknown, and to a certain extent, they were unwelcomed. They were the despised foreigners. So with all of those experiences, with all of those traumas, it's only understandable that those traumas, those fears are transported, are passed down to other generations. So the mere fact of trying for your children to have a better life, in some ways, according to this author here, create more drama and more harm than good. Because what you're doing is you're passing to them trauma and anxiety. You're passing your trauma. They are inheriting your trauma and your anxiety for them to excel and to have a better life. So something really, really interesting to understand.
Namaste.
So what I'll do is I'll go down here and take another vantage point because there were a couple of people here before, but they've just moved on. So let me try and get there without falling off the cliff. And as you can see, the view from here is spectacular. I'm on Bondi Point here, and I can see all the way down to Bronte Beach. In the water there, I don't know if you can see it, but there are all these swimmers. I think they're swimming this way, or they could be surfers. No, they're all surfers. So there you go. There are people, there are families, there are cultures that pass their trauma onto other generations. So it's intergenerational trauma, intergenerational challenges that are passed on. So, because, listen to this one here, this is the beauty. What the author is saying is that it's almost impossible to live up to the label of being happy all the time. Our parents came here and sacrificed everything for us to be happy, and they wanted us to be happy all the time. But our parents, our grandparents, uncles and aunts don't realise that you can't be happy all the time. It's impossible. So the big lesson from this author, from this book, is that we need to accept our children, our grandchildren, our relatives, our friends, our family, our work peers for who they are, and don't push our problems, our anxieties, our dreams onto them. Unless they want to do it themselves, then nobody else is going to be able to do it for them. So do yourself a favour and do future generations a favour by backing off, helping them when they ask for help. Unsolicited help is not help at all, I guess, is the big lesson that we need to pass on. If people ask you for advice, by all means, give them advice. But if they don't ask for advice, the best thing to do is to zip it. So here we are. Let me just show you where I'm standing. As you can see, got the sun happening over that side. So I'm cliffside. And if I go over this side here, we've got the coast all the way down to Bronte, Coogee and beyond. So let's finish off this book summary. I've got a few more points to make. I'm almost done. So the important thing for all of us is to live and be our true selves. And by being your true self, you can change the world, is what the author is saying. Not by being a fake, not by being what other people want you to be, but by being your authentic, wonderful self. So what we need to do is we all need to confront our pasts and not to avoid it. Sit down and journal. Write down the things that impacted you growing up, the things that were good and the things that weren't so good. And what you can do is you can use those to reframe and to relive your past and use them as stepping stones to help you grow, develop and become a better version of yourself in the future. And you'll come to a point where you'll have to mourn. You'll have to mourn your lost self. We'd have to take it into consideration and understand that things may not have been ideal. And this is where I absolutely love Prince Philip. I love Prince Philip's story because he had a terrible childhood growing up, but he accepted it. He accepted it that he had average parenting. He accepted it that his father was a philanderer and went off to marry somebody else. He accepted that he grew up in a boarding school and didn't have the love and cherishment of his parents. But he forgave them. He forgave them and he moved on, which is absolutely beautiful. An important lesson for everybody. So all of those people who are stuck in their past about their parents who may not have been as caring. Thank God I had very, very good parents. I had very good parents and great relatives. I don't have a problem. I don't have an issue. But this author says that there may be some people who have had a traumatized past. They need to get on with their lives. They need to forgive and forget and move on. Because at the end of the day, the author says that you need to release yourself from the prison, overcome your repressed past, and there's no need to overcompensate. And you need to embrace your true self. Because what the author is saying is that people tend to overcompensate for their pasts, do things, say things to try and fix what may have happened in the past. But the author is saying that there's no need to do that. Just get on with it, accept it, embrace it, and confront it, write it down, reshape it, reframe it, use it to your advantage as opposed to your disadvantage. You have the keys. Each and every one of us have the keys to our prison, or the prison of our own making, and we can basically unlock ourselves and get out of there. So there you go. So let me finish off with a positive affirmation. Let me put my sunglasses on because my eyes are starting to get overwhelmed by that beautiful winter sun. I love it, absolutely love it. So there you go, guys. I'm alive, I am well, I feel absolutely great. To my friends and family, stay connected, stay relevant, stay reasonable. I'm over here at Bondi Point. It's a beautiful day. So get out of the house, guys, get off the couch, come down and discover this magnificent city of Sydney. We have a glorious coastline, which is at its best. It's at its best during winter, during autumn, and beautiful days, beautiful temperature. Come for a walk and do your best. Yassas, Daleme, stay connected, stay relevant, stay reasonable, and most importantly, bring out that gifted child again, and don't worry about your past. Ciao, bye for now.